Morning! Wake everybody back up again?
Yeah.
Everybody's coffee's starting to wear off and people are starting to slip. So, of course, being this weekend, being 4th of July weekend, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about independence. So, as we all know, in 1774, our ancestors fought a war against British rule because they were not being represented by Parliament in England. They fought against a government that they did not elect and did not represent them. They were forced to pay taxes and they disagreed with them, and they finally had enough and decided they wanted to govern themselves. And they had to fight off a great and powerful enemy in order to earn their independence and freedom. Well, today I want to talk to you about doing much the same. I want each of you to fight for your independence. Of course, now some of you may be looking at me quizzically thinking I'm asking you to take up arms against the government, which, trust me, I'm not. We're okay there. I work for the government, I won't say that. But I am asking you to fight against the world itself, which is a greater battle. Our American predecessors may have fought off a powerful enemy, but what I'm asking you to fight off is a more powerful and stealthier one. The world. It's a far more powerful enemy because it sneaks in. But I'm asking you to fight for that. Christians today have become a part of the world. And the sin around us, it is becoming harder to tell who's a Christian and who is not. And I started to think about this morning when we were singing our hymns. And, I wrote my notes on it. I didn't really think about this, but until we were singing this, we were singing, "Though all hell assail me, I shall not be moved. Jesus will not fail me, I shall not be moved." And we always say, I will not be moved. But it's the powerful enemy, the one that's like in our face. We say, I will not be moved. But it's the stealthier one that seems to move us. The little ones that sneak through the cracks, the little temptations that we fall for. We say, the tempest rages. But it's not the tempest that we need to be concerned about sometimes. It's the sprinkle. That little sprinkle of rain that's leaking in. Not that big horrible tempest. We always prepare for the worst enemy. But we don't think about the subtle one. And I started to think about that when we were singing that. So, has anyone here ever expressed shock when someone else told them they were a Christian? Has anybody ever met somebody and you're talking and you're like, "Oh, I go to church on Sundays." "Oh, you go to church?" Should it be that surprising? Shouldn't it be like more of a, "Well, I kind of figured you did," by the way they act? But has anybody ever done that? Been surprised, or two people were having a conversation, "Oh, you go to church? Oh, you're a Christian too?" There's like shock in it, but it's, wow. Should we be surprised? I read somewhere, and I think it's truer now than ever, and I don't remember where I read it, but it says, if I were to ever have to stand in court accused of being a Christian, I want there to be enough evidence to convict me. If I'm standing in court accused of being a Christian, I want there to be no doubt. Guilty, done, sorry, I can't even argue it. I want it to be that obvious. I want people to know that I'm a Christian without me having to tell them. I want there to be enough evidence in my life and my actions, not just that I go to church on Sunday, but the rest of the week, the other 6 days, for people to know, just to know that I'm a Christian. And here's what the Bible says about this. 1 John 2, 15 through 17 says, "Do not love the world or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, love for the Father is not in them. For everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, comes not from the Father, but from the world. The world and its desires pass away, but whoever does the will of God lives forever." We're not to be of this world. We're supposed to be separate from this world. But as you see, these little sneaky things sneak in. The lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life. Now we're like, the lust of the flesh, that one's obvious. I can ignore it. I can avoid that because I'm good. I don't lust after other people. What about of the eyes? What are you letting sneak in through the eyes? What are you letting sneak into your life that's making you of this world and you don't realize? Now this is no easy battle because these days we're surrounded by temptation and sin. It's everywhere in this world. And we're pressured more and more to be accepting of sin. But as we become more accepting of sin, then sin will continue to thrive. It thrives on us letting it feed. "Oh, that's just a little sin. We'll ignore that." Or, "Oh, okay, yeah, you're sinning, but it's not a big one." Or everybody else, it's becoming popular. So we're not gonna mention that because it's not kosher to mention that. We're gonna get in trouble if we mention that. People will hate us. People will call us bigots. That's a big one now. We're bigots. But if we let it keep going, it just multiplies. An example of this is television. Now this is rhetorical, so please don't raise your hands and call yourself out. But think about the TV shows you watch. Is there anything that you can think of that you probably shouldn't be watching when you watch TV? That you sit there? Picture it this way. Picture the TV shows you watch regularly, or even once in a blue moon. Picture Jesus sitting on the couch beside you. Would you be ashamed to watch that show if Jesus were right there? Think about it. Because I know I sit there, and there are some shows I've turned off now, and I'm like, wow, we have turned into such prudes. We joke about it. We make jokes of it, but there's TV shows that we just won't watch anymore. Ruthie and I decided we'd give Game of Thrones a try. I bought one episode on Amazon. We don't like it. We're like, this isn't good. This isn't what I'd hoped for. This is definitely not appropriate. Never watch another episode. We've had episodes where we turned on a movie and made it 5 minutes, and it's like, turning that off. Too much language right in the beginning. But think about it. Does anybody here just let the show go and continue to watch it? Please, again, it's rhetorical. Don't call yourself out. But it's something to think about. Remember back in the 80s, and I'm not going back to the 70s or 60s because I don't remember the 60s. I wasn't there. In the 70s, I wasn't old enough to remember much TV other than Sesame Street. But remember back in the 80s when there was barely any vulgarity or nudity on public television? Now it's like it's a race to the bottom. Let's see who can get nastier quickier because that brings in ratings. Which, that concerns me. Because about 55% of our society at least claims to be Christian, right? So who's watching these shows? That they're getting such good ratings. Somebody is. Some Christians are watching these shows because they're getting good ratings. In the 80s and 90s%. Now, I'm not real good at math, and I'm taking statistics right now and hate it. But let me tell you, I can do that math, and that's adding up that some Christians were watching shows we shouldn't be. And the same goes for music and websites. Even commercials are getting hard to watch now and then. Even commercials are getting a little questionable. I won't even say a little. Some commercials are getting a lot questionable. This is why I say it's a far more difficult battle than our ancestors fought for our independence. It's because we're surrounded by sin and it invades every aspect of our lives now. But we're still expected not to be of this world. That doesn't matter. God's not up there going, oh, it's getting harder. I'll cut it easy on you. You're good. I understand. It's everywhere, so go ahead. No. God's like, I don't care. You need to do what I said because I put it down in this book. And that's what matters. So, because we're surrounded by sin, we're also starting to realize we care what the world thinks of us. We already read that we're not supposed to care what the world thinks of us, but we care. What does it matter though? This world is temporary. We got a long time after this world is over. Has anybody ever seen the little thing with a string where you color like a little bit of the string on a whole spool? And you say, this is your life. And then you pull out all the rest of the string. And this is eternity. Which is more important? A little bit of colored section? So I'd like to ask, another question. This one always kind of throws me too. And I read this on a website the other day. I have to give credit to somebody else. But has anybody here ever been to a funeral where the pastor was delivering a eulogy and he spoke about how the person who died is at peace with Jesus or something to that effect, and they're really, oh, it's good that they're at peace now, yada yada. But you ever wondered, was that person truly saved? Because I've been to a funeral like that where the pastor was like, oh, it's good that he's in heaven now, and I sat there going, I'm not so sure. Now I'm not going to say that in front of the widow or anybody, but I really don't think that's where he ended up. I mean, and that's a shame. But got to make everybody feel better. So oftentimes, certain pastors, now I haven't seen this in person, but I've read about this, will work people up into an emotional frenzy at these funerals and then ask them if they're saved. And then say if they're not saved, well, now's your chance. It's like a lottery or something, like you won a contest. Now's your chance. If you act now, 2 for 1 special or something like that. But act now. Come up here, get saved, say the sinner's prayer, or something of that effect. Poof, you're saved. Doesn't work that way. You can't take a pill and poof, you're saved. Yes, you can say you're saved, but if you truly don't believe it, you just got worked into an emotional frenzy, that emotion dies down and you kind of go back to what you used to be doing. it's a little more complicated than that. You can't just say it and feel it and drive on. It's not over. It's not done. You have to honestly mean it. It's not a one-time deal. Like I said, the problem is these people come down from their emotional high and nothing really changed for them. Are they really saved, or did they just say it because they were feeling emotional? It's kind of like if an alcoholic were to go to an AA meeting for the first time and say, you know what, I'm going to make a change. And they go to one AA meeting and they feel really good about themselves. And they go away from there and they're like, yep, I'm not going to drink anymore. 2 days later, they're in the bar. But I'm not an alcoholic anymore because 2 days ago I was good in an AA meeting. No, sorry. Still got a problem. Well, Christians, we have to do the same. We can't just go to church on Sunday and say, I'm good. No, our actions have to speak it. We need to be able to be convicted by our actions. Okay? Our shedding of earthly things. Now, this doesn't mean you have to go be impoverished or be a monk or go Amish. You don't need to do all that. But it means you have to separate yourselves from the worldly things that pervade our lives. When people are telling jokes at work that are not appropriate, do we walk away? Or do sometimes we get sucked into those jokes because it's funny and you're laughing? Sometimes we get sucked into those things and we walk away going, hopefully you walk away going, ooh, I shouldn't have done that. Hopefully you recognize it at least. But sometimes we do get pulled in those conversations. Guilty. You suddenly realize later on, you're like, I really shouldn't have said that. And guilty. Now, maybe we should try a little harder before that occurs to go, I need to separate myself from this, especially if you know you can't resist being pulled into it. Time to walk away. Separate yourself from it. Or maybe you're watching TV. Sometimes we watch shows we shouldn't. Well, maybe this isn't right. Picture again, Jesus sitting on the couch beside you. Would you watch it? Music you listen to. How many people still have music they used to listen to from back in the day before they were saved, or still listen to it now and then? We all like to listen to our old classic rock stations now and then, but now and then there's a couple songs on there you may be like, or old country even. Some country these days is getting a little questionable. There are some things I listen to now and then I'm like, no, we're changing that. I don't want the kids to hear that. It's another one. Picture the kids with you too. That works too. So, but this can also mean losing some friends. There's times where you have friends, you can't change them. We can try to save everybody, but we all know in reality it's not going to happen. And if that friend is still a temptation, maybe time to cut them loose. And that's hard. That's really hard. Friends, family, but we're talking eternity here. What's worth more? So if these friends aren't lifting you up, then they're pulling you down. There's really no stationary. There's no, I'm just going to hold you right here, unless you're already down. If you're trying to lift yourself up and they're holding you down, or they're pulling you down farther, you might have to let them go. And that's not an easy thing. What makes this truly challenging is, as I said earlier, is as sin is accepted, it multiplies. It's like a virus. If we don't fight it, it multiplies. What do we do when we get a cold? We take something for it. The white blood cells kill it. But if we leave it alone, does the cold get any better? It just gets worse, and things magnify through you. It's like a cancer to society. It's now to the point that you practically have to move into a cave to avoid sin, to be honest. But not an option. So, what can we do? There's a verse for this, and we read this verse a lot, but I don't think we sometimes take it into context, so I'm going to break it down a little bit. Ephesians 6:10 through 18 comes into play here. Most of us know this verse. Finally be strong in the Lord and in His mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against rulers, against authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Think about that. We like to think that, we're going to fight an enemy. No, it's not that obvious. We're fighting these authorities and these rulers, these powers in the dark world. That's the temptations. That's the TV shows. That's the commercials, the radio. That's what you're fighting against. It's not some blatant enemy that's in your face. It's more subtle than that. The devil's smarter than that. He's not stupid enough to come at us full force. He's coming in and sneaking it. And it's working. Therefore, put on the full armor of God so that when the day of evil comes, you'll be able to stand your ground. And after you have done everything to stand firm then with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place. Remember the righteousness part. That's your TV shows and your music and everything else that surrounds us. And with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. I like this because we always, again, we think about the big evils. We can resist those, but it's the subtle ones that are sneaking in on us. I mean, think about this one right here. When the day of evil comes, that's every day. It's as soon as we walk out the door, evil surrounds us. We're thinking like, oh, this is going to come in the end, this great battle at the end. No, this is every day the devil is battling against us. So, in addition to all this, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. What are those flaming arrows? Again, it's not these blatant things. It's all the little things that tempt us. It's the conversation around the cooler at work. It's the conversation in the evenings. It's the jokes. So take the helmet of salvation and the sword of Spirit, which is the Word of God. That's how we avoid temptation, is the Word of God. If you feel temptation coming, oh, I really want to do this. I know it's not right. Read your Bible. A little harder to do something right after you read the Bible, something that tempts you. This verse is all about avoiding temptations of the devil and this world. Why do you think sin is multiplying? Because the devil knows how to make it easier to fall into the trap of acceptance. We are to love one another, but that doesn't mean accepting everyone's choices and lifestyle. I hate to say it. We all know what is right and wrong, but sometimes it's hard to go against the flow. It's easier to go with the masses. It's much easier to go with the masses. Who wants to swim upriver when you can paddle down? You don't see rafting trips going up the river. Go down, it's more fun. It's just like life. We'll be called bigots and other such names for holding ourselves to a higher standard, or we may even have fewer friends because we won't get together for a poker game or a game of Cards Against Humanity. I've actually heard of Christians, yeah, we're going to get together and play Cards Against Humanity. And I'm like, and you'll go to church tomorrow? Okay, how's that feel? Doesn't register as something wrong? We may not be able to sit around and talk about the latest episode of Game of Thrones, or play a video game about carjacking and shooting people like Grand Theft Auto. I was hoping some kids would be in here for that part. But we need to remember that we're in this for the long game. We're not in this for the short game. We're in this for the long game. And I think it's just easier to hold ourselves accountable if we keep ourselves separate from this world and picture Jesus walking with us every waking moment. Always. Picture him sitting on the couch watching TV. Picture him at the water cooler. Picture him listening to the car radio as you're driving wherever you're going and you turn on the music. Would you be embarrassed if he was sitting in the passenger seat and that was on the radio? Turn it off. If you're on the computer, you're maybe on a website, I'm not saying the worst ones, but even something that's questionable, turn it off. If there's anything that you would not do in front of Jesus, then clearly you probably shouldn't be doing it. It's that simple. It's really probably the simplest way to check yourself. If you wouldn't do it in front of Jesus, then you probably shouldn't be doing it. Set yourself apart for the greater good at the end of the world. For what we're all waiting for, the reward. It's not here. It's not out there. It's something else we have to set ourselves aside for. And it's hard. It's everywhere. But we have to set ourselves aside for it. We have to resist. Because again, do you want to be that person that they say, oh, you're a Christian too? No, I want to be that person that I say, oh, I'm a Christian. They're like, duh, I knew that. That's who we need to all be. That's who we need to be in the end. We need it to wear it on our shirt sleeves, on our shirt. And I'm not saying go out and buy a bunch of Christian clothes, but you need it in your actions that everybody knows that you're a believer. And you'll lift other believers up, and you'll lift up non-believers. Live such a life that they're envious. That non-believers are envious of your life. That they look at your life and go, you know what? They're not rich. They're not, maybe not the most best off in the world, but they're happy. And they have set themselves apart. That's who we need to be. Amen.